Give me one sec here to figure out where it broke. It broke early, so I might just take it from the top. Because we only got like 2 pages in. It's not far enough along. Okay, I know where we are. Sorry about all that. Disadvantage. I haven't had this particular problem in a minute, so I'm not quite sure why it's happening again. Hopefully it won't happen anymore. We'll find out. I'll keep a very close eye. All right. He wore a patch, had sewn it on. Lucy, it's wait a minute. I need to activate my recording device. He wore a patch, had sewn it on. Lucy, it said, white letters on a black, blue-centered circle, and that was as close as he dared come to the old one. It looked naked, too, without the swan in flight that belonged there. But someone might know Le Cygne and Krejas, and he and Ross and Mitri had always agreed, in all the scams, to keep the name out of it. So it was not possible now to go to station offices and say, I lied, change the name, put it the way it ought to be. That would finish everything. And maybe, he thought, a lifetime would get him used to looking at the patch that way. Coming? Allison asked him. He walked into the restaurant arm in arm with Allison, one of those places he expected of Allison, ornate and expensive, where flash and fine cloth belonged, and stationer types occupied tables alongside spacers of the big ships, men and women with officers' stripes. A lot of silver hair in the place. A lot of money. A waiter intercepted them. "Reilly," Allison said, and the waiter nodded deferentially and showed them the way among serpentine pillars to the recesses of the place, deep shadows along the walls. A silver company occupied the table he located for them, a company that rose when they arrived. Sandor did a quick scan of lamp-lit faces, heart thumping, hand already extending in response to offered hands and a murmur of courtesies, and found himself face to face with Curran Reilly. No hand offered there. Nothing offered. "Curran," Allison said. "Helm 22 of Dublin, my number 2. Captain Stevens of Lucy. But you'll have met." "Yes," Sandor said, the adrenaline hazing everything else, and in belated time Curran Reilly took the hand he offered, a dry palm clenched about his sweating one. A grip that he expected, hard and unfriendly like the stare. And other hands, then, earlier offered. "Deirdre," Allison said, "number 3." A freckled, solid woman, dark-haired like all the Rileys, but with a grin that went straight to the heart, punctured his anger and half made up for Curran. Happiness. He was not accustomed to cause that in people. "Neil," Allison said of the third, another offered hand, a lank and bearded man with an earnestness that persuaded him Curran was the least that persuaded him Curran was at least unique in the lot. "Neil," he murmured in turn, looked at the others. The waiter hovered, offering chairs. They settled again, but himself between Allison and Deirdre, facing Curran and Neil. "Would you like cocktails?" the waiter asked. "Drinks with dinner," Allison said. "That's all right with everyone?" Nods all about. The waiter whisked forth a set of menus, and for a merciful time there was that amenity among them. He was buying. He reckoned that. The prices were enough to chill the blood, but he nerved himself and ordered the best, maintained a smile when his guests did. It was, after all, one night, one time, an occasion. He could afford it, he persuaded himself, to please these people, to give them what they were accustomed to having, on their own money. The waiter departed. A silence hung there. "Got everything in order?" Curran asked Allison finally. "All settled." "Megan sends her regards." A silence. A glance downward. Sandor had no idea who Megan might be. No one offered to enlighten him. "I'll talk to her," Allison said. "It's not goodbye, after all. We'll be meeting on loops." "I think she understands," Deirdre said. "My people, they know. They know why." "Everyone knows why," Allison said. "It's forgiving it." She laid her hand briefly on Sandor's arm. "Ship politics." To the others, "We got the outfitting done. First class."
What kind of accommodations have we got?
Neil asked. The adjoining table filled, with all attendant disorganization. Sandor sat and listened to Riley's talk among themselves, plans for packing, for farewells, discussion of what supplies they had laid in.
Private cabins and no dunnage limit? Deirdre exclaimed, eyes alight. "I thought we might be tight."
No limit within reason, Sandor said, breaking out into the Riley dialogues, expanded at the reaction that got from the lot of them. That's one advantage of a small cruise ship, few as there are. Bring anything you like, any cabin you like. You and Allison plan to double up? Curran asked. It was not the question, it was the silence that went after it. The look in Curran's eyes. Curran? Allison said. Just wondering. The meals started arriving, wine first, the appetizers when they had scarcely settled from that. Sandor sat and smoldered, out of appetite with the temper that was boiling in him. "I'll tell you," he said, jabbing a serving knife in Curran's direction as the waiter passed finally out of earshot. "Mr. Riley, I think you and I have a problem. I'm not sure why, or what, but it started up there in Blue Section this morning, and I'm not going to have it go on." "Stevens," Allison said, "I think we'd better settle it." "All right," Curran said softly. "The number one says you're all right. That goes with me. Let's start from zero." "My rules, mister." "Absolutely," Curran said. "Chain of command. As soon as we get that lock off." "Ought to be soon," Allison said. "How about that routing application?" "Got it," Curran said. His sullen face lighted instantly. "Clear. We're routed to Venture and Bryans, Constant in Company Commodities, on Dublin's guarantee." Sandor had ducked his head to eat and stay out of it. He looked up again. "You're talking about our route and cargo." "Right. You take it on yourself. Part of the package." "No, not part of the package. You don't set up routes or make agreements." "Come down, man. We've got you a deal better than you could get. A deal that's guaranteed profit, with a station commerce load that doesn't cost you, and guaranteed rate for the delivery. How do you do better than that?" "I don't care what you've got. No, I decide where Lucy goes and if she goes." "Slow," Allison said, patted his arm once, twice. "Hold it. Listen, it is part of the package. I was going to tell you. It's a good deal. The best. The Hinderstars opening up again, the stations being set up to operate. You know what a chance it is to get in on the setup of a station? Dublin herself is taking on cargo and looping back to Mariner. But we go out to the Hinderstars, towards Saul. You see how it works? That's Saul trade. Luxuries, exotics. We take a station load out and do small runs, and as the Saul trade starts coming in, we start picking up Saul cargo. We run small cargo at first, then see about doing that conversion that'll boost her up to speed. You've got that planned too. Because I know this kind of economics, if you don't. We're not talking about dockside trading. We're talking about running full and being where trade can build."
We can get backing that way, Deirdre said. Eventually, we schedule to catch Dublin's Pell loop and funnel Sol goods into Union territory. And that's big profit. Dublin's not doing a total act of charity.
They'll cut our throats. Alliance traitors. Locals won't stand for that.
Stop thinking like a marginer, Allison said. You're linked to the Dublin operation. They won't touch us the way they won't touch Dublin herself. And after one run, we'll be local. We'll have Alliance paper.
And I take what deals Dublin offers.
Fair deals.
He thought about it a moment, avoiding the sight of Curran Riley, took a drink of wine. Hinder stars, he said, thinking that if there was a place least likely for his record to catch up with him, it had to be that, the forgotten earthward stations. Sol goods, expensive for their mass. Rarities and luxuries. So Dublin wants a trade link.
Believe it, Allison said. Both sides of the line are interested. Pell, absolutely. Union, in keeping the flow of trade across the line. You think Union wants Pell and Sol in bed together alone? No. Union's supporting Union-side merchanters that want to trade across the line, and there's nothing that says we can't set up an operation on this side.
We.
Any way you like it. You needed the bailout, and we saw the advantage. You, we. You and the lot of us on Lucy can develop a new loop that's going to pay.
He thought about it again, excited in spite of himself. You plan to stay on. How long?
We don't necessarily plan to go back. It's like I said, too far to the posted ranks. We're coming to stay.
He nodded slowly. All right, he said, even including Curran in that. All right, I'll take your deal. And the lot of you. What about charts?
Got that arranged, Curran said. No problem with that. From what I know, Allison said, we're going to have a double jump to Venture and a double to Bryant's.
Lonely out that direction.
Pell's got some sort of security out that way. Patrol? They didn't say. They just put out that they've got it watched.
Comforting. He doubted it all. It was likely bluff. Or Pell was that determined to keep the Sol link open. He looked up again at the strangers who looked to share with him, to come onto Lucy's deck. Permanent company. So they were not all what he would have chosen. But with a Curran came a Deirdre, whose broad, cheerful self he liked on sight, and Neil Riley, who had said little of anything and who seemed set in the background by all the others. They were family, like any other, the rough and the smooth together. He had not known that kind of closeness, not since Ross. He wanted it, and Allison, with a yearning that welled up in his throat. Oh, he wanted it, and Allison, with a yearning that welled up in his throat and behind his eyes and throughout. And it was his. It came with the wealth, the luck he still could not imagine. But it was real. It was all about him. He made himself relax, limb by limb, up to the shoulders, looked across the table at his acquired crew, and felt something knotted up inside unsnarl itself. And when dinner was done, down to a fancy fruit dessert, when they had drunk as much as merchanters were apt to drink on liberty, they found things to laugh at, Dubliner anecdotes, tales on each other. He laughed and wiped his eyes, as he had not done in longer than he had forgotten. As he had not done in longer than he had forgotten. The bill was his. He took it without flinching, gave a tip to the waiter, left a happy man in their wake, and strolled out into the chill air of the dockside with his flock of Dubliners. Go to the offices, he suggested. See if we can't get the lock off my ship.
Let's, Allison agreed. Is it past altar dawn? We can get something done. Get a pet carrier, Deirdre said.
Walk, said Neil. We might be sober when we get there. They walked along the busy docks past Lucy's barriered berth, weaving a good deal less when they had covered all of Green Dock, sweating a bit when they had come into Blue and near the customs offices. But he came differently this time, in company, with the knowledge of Dublin's lawyer behind them, and papers on file that put him in the right. He walked up to the desk and faced the official with a plain request, brought out the papers. "I need the lock off," he said. "We seem to have everything else straightened away but that."
Ah, the official said. Captain Stevens.
"Can we get it taken care of?" The official produced a sealed envelope, passed it over. "What's this?"
I've no idea, sir. I'm told it relates to the hold order.
He was conscious of the others at his back, refused to look at them, tore open the seal on the message slip, and read it once before it sank in. Report Blue Dock number 3. He read it, looking back at Allison then. A.S. Norway. Signy Mallory commanding. Curran swore. "Mallory," Allison said, and it might as well have been an oath. "On Pell?"
Arrived 2 hours ago, the official said, a roll of the eyes toward the clock. The message is half an hour old.
"What's the military doing in this?" Curran asked. "Those papers are clear."
I don't know, sir, the official said. Answering ought to clear it up.
The fear was back, familiar as an old suit of clothes. "I'd better get out there and take care of this," Sandor said. "I don't see there's any reason for you to go." They walked out with him, that much at least, back out onto the docks, facing the military ships. The schedule boards showed it plainly. Norway, the third berth down, occupied now, conspicuously alight. He looked at the Dubliners, at worried faces, and Curran's scowl. "Don't know how long this might take," he said. "Allison, maybe I'd better call you after I get back to the sleepover. Maybe you'd better go on back to Dublin."
No, Allison said. If you don't get out of there fairly soon, we'll be calling some legal help. They don't bluff us.
That was some comfort. He looked at the rest of them, who showed no inclination to take any different course. Nodded then, thrust his hands into his pockets, crumpling the message in the right. He prepared arguments, countercharges, mustered the same indignation he had used on authorities before. It was all he knew how to do. But it was hard to keep the bluff intact walking up the lighted access of Norway, where uniformed troops these were troops, far different from any station-side militia took him in charge and searched him. They were rejuved, a great number of these men and women, old enough to have fought in the war, silver-haired, and some of them marked with scars no station-sider would have had to wear. They were not rough with him in their searching, but they were more thorough than the police had been. They frightened him, the way that ship out there frightened him. Behind that cheerful, lighted access, a huge carrier bristling with armaments, a company ship from another age. They brought him toward the ramp that led into the access, and standing in the access way, Tally, grim and waiting for him. He kept walking. So the man was part of this action. He was somehow not surprised. The Dubliners, he was thinking, ought to get back to their ship. The military would think twice about demanding that a merchanter family of the Reillys' size give up some of its own to questioning. But alone, far from Dublin, they were vulnerable, unused to authorities who ran things as they pleased. He encountered Tally, a bleak, pale-eyed stare from the Alliance officer, a nod in the direction he should go. So he had acquired a certain importance. A man with commander's rank took him in personal charge and escorted him into the heart of this narrow-accessed monster. Dim corridors, a long walk to a wider area, and a lift to the upper levels. He stared through Tally on the way up in the car. Conversation could do him no good. One never gave anything away. One always regretted it later. A walk afterward down a narrower corridor, bare, dull metal everywhere, nothing so cheerful as Lucy's white, age-scarred compartments. coded identifications on the exposed lines on the compartments. Everything was efficiency and no comfort. They reached the door of an office and got a come-ahead light. The door opened and Tally brought him through.
Captain, Tally said, Stevens of the Merchantr Lucy.
The silver-haired woman was already looking at him across her desk, already sizing him up.
Mallory, she identified herself. Sit down, Captain.
He pulled the chair over and sat facing her across the desk, while Tally settled himself against the cabinet, arms folded. Mallory pushed her chair back from the desk and leaned back in it. Rejuved, young, old, staring at him with dark eyes that said nothing back.
You're getting clearance to go out, she said, on the venture run. I understand there's some question about your ID, Captain.
His wits deserted him. It was not the question. It was the source. One of the 9 captains, one of the Maziani from the war years, who had gotten supply by boarding merchanters, by taking supplies and personnel, who had killed. It might have been this one, those years ago, this ship, that had locked onto Lucy and boarded. He might be that close to the captain who had ordered it, among troops who had been inside the armor, who had killed all his family. He had thought if he met one of them he would kill barehanded, and he found himself sitting still and staring back, paralyzed by the quiet, the tenor of the moment.
You don't have any comment, Mallory said.
I thought it was settled.
Is there an irregularity, Captain?
Softly, staring straight at him. Look, I just want the lock off my ship. I've got a cargo lined up. I've got everything else in order. Because some muddled up merchanter mistakes my ship.
Let me see your papers, Captain.
It took the breath out of his argument. He hesitated, off his mental balance, pulled them out of his pocket and leaned forward as she did, passing them. Oh my gosh, losing the line in the middle of the sentence. He hesitated, off his mental balance, pulled them out of his pocket, and leaned forward as she did, passing them into her extended hand across the desk, close, that close to touching. She leaned back easily, looked through them, lingered over them.
But these are new, she said, except for the title papers, of course.
She felt of the older paper, the title itself false.
You know this kind of paper gets traded on the market. Has to get from one station to the other, after all, and across docks. And I know places where you can get it. Don't you, Captain?
I'm legitimate.
So,
She passed the papers back to him, and he thrust them quickly back into his pocket, his fingers gone cold.
so, linked up with Dublin Again, are you? A very respectable operation. That does say something for you. Union sider.
I plan to operate here, on the Alliance side.
Oh, relations are very good with Union at the moment. They're supplying ships and troops all along the line. We have no quarrel with Union origins. You plan to stay here, do you? Operate as Dublin's pipeline out of the Sol trade?
I don't know how things will work out. He stepped slowly through the argument, aware of maneuvering on the other side, not understanding it. Mallory was not taken in, was prodding at him to find some provocation.
Your certification comes through us, she said. We've got a problem, Captain. We've got Maziani activity between us and Sol into the Hinder stars. Does that bother you?
It bothers me.
They'd like to cut us off, you understand. It's a lot of territory to patrol, and they win simply by scaring merchanters out of that run. We've got 2 stations coming back into operation, and we're doing what we can to keep the zones clear. We'll be out at the null points, making sure you're not ambushed there. We've got a rare agreement on the other side of the line. Union's sealing up Tri-Point and Brady's and any other point you can name.
The eyes shot back. The eyes shot up to lock on his, abrupt and invasive.
You play the shy side of legal, do you? Marginer, I reckon you're no stranger to the fringes. lying off in space, operating out of the null points, doing trading on the side without customs looking on. I'll bet you have a fine sense of what's trouble and what's not. A fine sense." He said nothing, tried to think of an excuse to look away, and failed in that, too. "Might stand you in good stead," she said. "It's a place out there that makes raw nerves survival positive. We'll be there, Captain. I really want you to know that." It was delivered very softly, with the same stare. It promised he had no idea what. "You can go," she said. "You'll find the obstacles clear. But I have news for you. Your Constantine Company cargo is cancelled. You'll be carrying military cargo. You'll be paid hazard rate. An advantage. You'll be taking it aboard in short order and undocking at 0900 main day."
Like that.
Like that.
I thought I was under military investigation.
"You are," she said. "Good evening, Captain."
Maybe I don't want this. Maybe I want to change my mind.
"Do you, Captain? I'd prefer not."
The silence hung there. "All right," he said. "You protect us, do you?"
"As best we can, Captain."
Never Stevens. She never used the name. He stood up, nodded a reflexive courtesy. Not a response. Dead eyes stared into him. He turned then and walked out, and Tally followed him into the corridor, hand signaled a trooper who came down the corridor to walk him out. Down the lift and out to the ramp again, the cold of the dockside coming as a shock after the metal closeness of the warship. He walked down the slant past the guard that stood there, past uniformed troops and idle, hard-eyed stares. He reached the dockside and walked away, taking larger breaths the farther he got from the perimeter. He felt as if he had been picked up and shaken, dropped hard. He saw the Dubliners waiting for him, out by the lighted fronts of the offices, Allison and the others. He went toward them with the consciousness that the military might be watching his back, taking notes on his associations.
"What was it?" Allison asked. "Trouble?"
He shook his head and swept them up with a motion of his arms. "Come on. We've got our clearance. They're going to load."
"Like that?"
"Like that." He looked at Curran as the five of them headed down the dock at a good pace. "The Constantine cargo just got cancelled. We've been handed military stuff. Hazard rate. Immediate loading, undocking at 0900 main day."
"Military?"
For once, Curran was taken aback.
"What specifically?"
"No word on that. I talked with Mallory. The lock was hers. The cargo's hers. I think she wants rumors spread, or she wouldn't spill what she spilled."
"Like what?"
"That Union's occupying the null points along the line, hunting Maziani, and Alliance is doing the same."
"Lord, you've got to tell that to the old man."
He walked along in a moment's silence. That it took that much for them to suggest him and Riley talking face to face. They were scared. He saw that. Deirdre's face had lost all its cheer, pale under its freckles. Allison's had a hard-eyed wariness like Curran's. Neil just looked worried. "I'll make a call from Lucy," Sandor said, "when I get clear and boarded."
"They're on a hunt?" Neil asked.
"I think I was told what she wants told in every bar on dockside, and I don't know what the percentage is."
"She say anything else?"
Curran asked. "She knows about the deal. She talked about the profit there might be for a route from Sol into Union, direct to the point. Said they're going to be at the null points of the hinder stars, keeping an eye on things."
"For sure?" Allison said.
"I don't trust anything I was told. I know I want it. I know I want to be down there if they're taking the security seal off the hatch. I want to see what they've had their fingers into on my ship."
"We're going to take a look and go straight back to Dublin," Allison said, "as soon as we're sure we've got that lock open. Got some goodbyes to say, all of us. If they're going to load for a 0900 undock, then you can use some crew over there."
"Could," he agreed. "Could." He had help, he was thinking, an unaccustomed comfort. He had his Dubliners, who were not leaving him at the first breath of trouble. He felt a curious warmth in that thought. Legitimate, he kept reminding himself. With connections, Mallory could not touch him. Might not want to, wanting to keep on the good side of a powerful Union side merchanter, with all its connections. He tried to believe that. But he had looked Mallory in the eyes, and doubted everything. Downers surrounded the lock, the barriers having been removed. Downers in the company of one idle dock worker, who rose from the side of the ramp and gave them all a looking at. "Business here?" the man asked. "Stevens," Sandor said. "Ship's owner." The dock worker held out his hand. "Be happy to turn her over to you, sir, with ID. Otherwise, I have to report." It was insane, such bizarre security interwoven with the real threat of Alliance military. It was Pell, and they did things in strange ways. He took out his papers and showed them.
He good?
A Downer asked, breather masked and popping and hissing in the process. Round brown eyes looked at them, one Downer, a whole half circle of Downers. "Good paper," the dock worker confirmed. "Thank you, sir. Good day to you, sir, or good night, whichever." And the dock worker collected his assortment of Downers, who bowed and bobbed courtesies in the departure, trooped off with shrill calls and motion very like dancing. "Lord," Allison said. "Pell," Sandor said. He turned, led the way up the ramp in deliberation, into the lighted access, with thoughts now only for his ship. He wanted the tube passage into the familiar lock. Home again. He walked the tube passage into the I just read that. He kept going to the lift, 5 of them to fill the space, to make an unaccustomed crowd in the narrow corridors. The lift let them out on the main level, into the narrow bowed floor of the... Where's that bowed? Might be bowed. The lift let them out on the main level into the narrow, bowed floor of the in-dock living quarters and the bridge, and he stood by the lift door and watched them walk about the little zone of curved deck that was accessible. Silver-clad visitors come home to scarred Lucy, to pass their fingers over her aged surfaces, to touch the control banks and the cushions, to look this way and that up the inaccessible curve of her cabin space and storage corridors, wondering aloud about this and that point of her design. He was anxious in that scrutiny, watched their faces, their smallest reactions, more sensitive than if they had been looking him over. "Not so comfortable in dock," Allison said, "but plenty of room moving." She fingered the consoles. He had cleaned the tape marks off because of customs, disposed of all the evidence, but she found a sticky smudge and rubbed at it. She looked back at him. "She's all right," she pronounced. "She's all right." He nodded, feeling the knot in his chest dissolve. "Handle easy?" Curran asked. "A crooked docking jet. That's her only wobble. I use it." "That's all right," Curran said, surprisingly easy. "You going to call the old man?" Allison asked. "It's likely," he said into the comm, "that all of it's planted rumors. But if you're headed for Union space, sir, it seemed you might want to know what was said." "Are you in trouble with him?" The voice came back to him. "It's still possible, yes, sir." And aware of the possibility, the transmission was tapped, shielded line as it was. "I hope they get it straightened up." A silence from the other end. "Right," Michael Riley said. "You'll be taking care, Captain." "Yes, sir." "Thanks for the advisement." "Thank you, sir." "Yes," the Riley said. "You might do that." "Sir." "Information appreciated, Lucy." "Signing off, Dublin." He shut it down, alone in the quiet again. The Dubliners were on their way back to their ship, for goodbyes, for gathering their baggage. He sat in the familiar cushion, staring at his reflection in the dark screens, and for a moment not recognizing himself, barbered and immaculate and in debt over his head. Mallory's face kept coming back at him, that scene in her on-ship office, Tally's ace, and the meeting on Pell. The old fear kept trying to reassert itself. He kept trying to put it down again. He clasped his hands in front of him on a vacant area of the console, lowered his head onto his arms, tried for a moment to rest and to recall what time it was. A long, long string of hours. He thought that he had slid mostly into the alter-day cycle, or somehow he had forgotten sleep. He did that, slept where he sat. It was calm that woke him, the notice from dockside that he had cargo coming in, and would he prepare to receive? Chapter 10. Leaving Dublin was a tumult of goodbyes, of cousin friends hugging and looking like tears. Ma'am with a look of patience, and Megan and Connie. Connie's snuffling, and Megan not. Megan with that data gatherer's focus to her stare, that most acquired infancy, who got posted bridge crew, wide scanning the moment, too busy inputting to output, even losing a daughter. And in that they had always understood each other. No need for fuss when it stopped nothing. Allison hugged her pregnant sister, listened to the snuffles, hugged her mother longer, patted her shoulder. "See ya," she said. "In not so many months, maybe." "Right," her mother said. And when she had begun picking up the duffel and other baggage in a heap about her feet, "Don't take chances." "Right," she told Megan, and shouldered strings and straps and picked up the sacks with handles. She looked back once more, at both of them, nodded when they waved, and then headed out of the lock and down the access tube to the ramp, leaving her three companions to muddle their own way off through their own farewells. Her leaving had an element of the ridiculous. Instead of the single duffel bag she might have taken, she moved all her belongings. It was not the way she had started. But she found excuses to take this oddment and that, found sacks and bags people were willing to part with, and ended up going down the ramp and across the docks loaded with everything she owned, a thumping, swinging load she would have done better to have called a docksider to carry. But it was not that far to walk, and the load was not that heavy, distributed as it was. She had her papers, her IDs, and her cards, and a letter tape from Michael Riley himself that advised anyone they cared to have know it that Lucy was an associate of Dublin Again. In case, the old man put it, you have credit troubles somewhere. God forbid they met someone with some grudge Stevens had deserved for himself in his precious career. Or trouble with the military out there. She was far less sanguine about the voyage than she had been when she conceived it. The neat control she had envisioned over the situation had considerably unraveled. But she went, and the others would, for the same reasons, and if it should get tight out there, then they would handle it, she and her cousins. To sit a chair before she died of old age. It was that close, and no threat, no sting of parting was going to take it from her. She kept walking. The first, she knew, of her unit to leave Dublin, headed for Lucy's dock. She had had to go up the emergency accesses to get her belongings, and pack while clambering back and forth down the angle of deck and bulkhead. No easy proposition. She was tired and had visions of bed and sleep. There was no question of spending her last night on Dublin. There was no room, the on-board sleeping accommodations filled with others with more seniority. Her leaving had the same exigencies as her life aboard. No room, never room, and she made her overloaded way down the dockside with a knot in her throat and a smothered anger at the way of things, worked the anger off in the effort of walking, burdened as she was. So good-bye, once and for all. It hurt. She expected that. So did giving birth, and other necessary things. There was Lucy's berth at last, a swarm with loading vehicles, with lights and downers and dockers. Chaos. The sight unfolding past the gantries drained the strength out of her. She stopped a moment to take her breath, then started doggedly toward the mess, closer and closer. There was Stevens, out there on the dockside, in a disreputable pair of coveralls, shouting orders for the dockers who were rolling canisters onto the loading ramp in rapid sequence. She walked into it, into a sudden confluence of downers who tugged at the straps and sacks. "Take, take for you," they piped, and she tried to keep them. "It's all right," Stevens called to her. She surrendered the weight. "Airlock," she instructed the downers, shouting over the clank of loading ramps and canisters, and they whistled and bobbed and scampered off with the load, blithe and light. Her knees ached. "When did this start?" she asked Stevens, who looked wrung out. "Too long ago. Listen, I've got to call. The supplies are coming in it. I've got to call the Oh my gosh, golly gee willikers. Too long ago. Listen, I've got to call. The supplies are coming in any minute. You want to do me a favor, get on that. Ship stores are a core, bridge accessed for null G stuff, or stack it in the lift corridor if it's personal and heated area stuff, and in the core if it's freezer stuff too, because we can't get at the galley yet. You'll have to suit up." "Got it." She gathered her reserves and headed up the ramp to look it over. It was going to be that way, she reckoned, for the next few hours, and with luck the rest of the unit would come trailing in shortly. She hoped. And the supplies started coming. Curran and Neil came in together, with notions of sleep abandoned. Deirdre came trailing in last, with most of the real work done, and Stevens a shell of himself, his voice mostly gone, checking the last of the loading with the docker boss, signing papers. Most of it was his job. Had to be, since he was the only one who knew the ship, the shape of the holds, and where the tracks ran, and how to arrange the load for access adventure. They all trailed into the sleeping area finally, sweating and undone, Stevens bringing up the rear. Allison sat down on one of the benches, collapsing in the clutter of personal belongings she had struggled to get to main level. Sat among her cousins likewise encumbered, and saw Stevens cast himself down at the number 4 bridge post to call the dockmaster's office and report status. To feed the manifest into comp finally, a matter of shoving the slip into the recorder and waiting till the machine admitted it had read it out. So they boarded. They sat there, in their places, too tired to move, Neil stretched out on a convenient couch with a soft bit of baggage under his head. "Still 0900 for departure?" Allison asked. "Got those charts yet?" Stevens nodded. "Gonna get some sleep and input them." "We've got to get our hours arranged. Put you and Neil and Deirdre on main day, and me and Curran on alter day." He nodded again, accepting that. "It's 0400, he said. "Not much time for rest." She thought of the bottle in her baggage, bent over and delved into one of the sacks, came up with that and uncapped it, offered it first to Stevens, an impulse of self-sacrifice, a reach between the sleeping couches and the number 4 post. "Thanks," he said. He drank a sip and passed it back. She drank, and it went from her to Curran and to Deirdre. Neil was already gone, asprawl on the couch. No one said much. They killed the bottle, round and round, and long before she and Curran and Deirdre had reached the bottom of it, Stevens had slumped where he sat, collapsed with his head fallen against the tape-patched plastic, one arm hanging limp off the arm of the cushion. "Maybe we should move him," Allison said to Curran and Deirdre. "Can't move myself."
Curran said.
Neither could she, when she thought about it. No searching after blankets, nothing to make the bare couches more comfortable. Curran made himself a nest of his baggage on the couch, and Deirdre got a jacket out of her bags and flung that over herself, lying down. Allison inspected the bottom of the bottle and set it down, picked out her softest luggage and used it for a pillow, with a numbed, aching spot in her, for Dublin, for the change in her affairs. The patches in the upholstery, the dinginess of the paneling, everything. There were scars a ship got from neglect, from a patched-together operation. Lord, the backup systems Stevens had talked about. They were going out at main dawn, and there was no way those systems could have been installed yet. He meant to get them in while they were running. Probably thought nothing of it. Military cargo. The cans they had taken on were sealed. Chemicals, most likely. Life support goods. Electronics. Things stations in the process of putting themselves back in operation might desperately need. But Mallory being involved, this military interest in Lucy, she felt far less secure in this setting out than she had expected to be. And what if Mallory was the enemy he had acquired, she wondered, her mind beginning to blank out on her, with the liquor and the exhaustion. What if he had had some previous run-in with Mallory? There was no way to know, and she had brought her people into it. She slept with fists clenched. It was that kind of night. Chapter 11. Movin' Out. Sandor sat at the familiar post, doing the familiar things, held himself back moment by moment from taking a call on comm, from doing one of the myriad things he was accustomed to doing simultaneously. No tape on the controls this run, competent Dubliner voices, with that common accent any ship developed, isolate families generations aboard their ships, talked in his left ear, while station comm came into his right. Relax, he told himself again and again. It was like running the ship by remote, with a whole different bank of machinery. Allison sat the number 2 seat, and the voices of Curran and Deirdre and Neil softly gave him all that he needed, anticipating him. Different from other help he had had aboard, anticipating him, knowing what he would need as if they were reading his mind, because they were good. "There she goes," Allison said, putting Dublin on vid. "That's good-bye for a while." Another voice was talking into his right ear, relayed through station. It was the voice of Dublin, wishing them well. "Reply," Allison said to Neil at comm, and a message went out in return. But there was no interruption. No move faltered. The data kept coming, and now they did slow turnover, a drifting maneuver. "Cargo secure," the word came to him from Deirdre. "No difficulties." Got that. Stand by rotation.
"Got it." He pushed the button. The rotation lock synced in, and there began a slow complication of the cabin stresses, a settling of backsides and bodies into cushions and arms to sides. Oh, gosh golly. Let's try that again. I see what she's doing. I see what she's doing. My brain didn't catch up with it, sadly. He pushed the button. The rotation lock synced in, and there began a slow complication of the cabin stresses, a settling of backsides and bodies into cushions, and arms to sides, and minds into a sense of up and down. They were getting acceleration stress and enough rotational force to make the whole ship theirs again. "All right," he said when their status was relayed to station, when station sent them back a run clear for system exit. "We get those systems installed. Transfer all scan to number 2 and we'll get it done." "Lord help us," Curran muttered, did as he was asked, and carefully climbed out of his seat while Sandor got out of his.
You always make your repairs like this. Better than paying dock charge, Sandor said. Hope they gave us a unit that works. A shake of Curran's head. They had time, plenty of time, leisurely moving outbound from Pell. The noise of stations surrounded them, chatter from the incoming merchanter Pixie 2, a name known all over the Beyond, and the music of other names, like Mary Gold and the can hauler Kelly Lee. And all of a sudden, a new name.
Norway's outbound,
Neil said. For a moment Sandor's heart sped. He sat still, braced as he was against the scan station cushion. But that was only habit, that panic. On our own business, I reckon, he said, and set himself quietly back to the matter of the replacement module. The warship passed them, as if they were a stationary object. The carrier went by. Deirdre put it on vid, and there was nothing to see but an approaching disturbance that whipped by faster than vid could track it.
See if you can find out their heading, Allison asked Deirdre.
Station refused the answer.
Got it blanked, Deirdre said. She's not tracked on any schematic, and Longscan isn't handling her.
Bet they're not, Sandor muttered. Reckon she's on a hunt where we're going. No one said anything to that. He looked from time to time in Allison's direction, suspecting that the hands on Lucy's controls at the moment had never guided a ship through any procedure. Competent, knowing all things to do, making no mistakes, as few as there were to make in this kind of operation that Otto could carry as well. He did not ask the question. Allison and the others had their pride, that was certain. But he had that notion, from the look in Allison Reilly's eyes when the control passed to her, a flicker of panic and desire at once, a tenseness that was not like the competency she had shown before that. So she had worked sims, at least, or handled the controls of an auxiliary bridge on a ship the size of Dublin, matching move for move with Dublin helm. She was all right. But he got up when he saw her reach to comp and try to key through to navigation, held to the back of her cushion. You don't have the comp keys posted, she said.
You don't have the comp keys posted, she said. I don't get the nav function under General Op.
Better let me do the jump setup, he said. This time. I know her. She looked at him, a shift of her eyes mirrored in the screen in front of her.
Right, she said. You want to walk me through it?
He held where he was, thinking about that, about the deeper things in comp.
Ross, now what? You mind?
She asked, on the train of what she had already asked. So it came. Let me work it out this time, he said. You're supposed to be on altar day. Suppose you take your time off and go get some sleep. You're going to have to take her after jump.
Look, I'd like to go through the setup.
Did I tell you who's setting up the schedules on this ship? Go on, get some rest. She said nothing for the moment, sitting with her back to him. He stayed where he was, adamant. And finally she turned on the auto and levered herself out of the cushion. Offended pride. It was in every movement. Cabins are up the curve there, he said, trying to pretend he had noticed none of the signals, trying to smooth it over with courtesy. It hurt enough to offer that, to open up the cabins more than the one he had given to his sometime one-man crews. I sleep on the bridge, he had always said, and done that, bunked in the in-dock sleeping area, catnapped through the nights, because going into a cabin, sealing himself off from what happened on Lucy's bridge, there was too much mischief could be done. Crazy, they had muttered back at him, and that thought always frightened him. Take any one you like. I'm not particular. Curran, he said, turning from Allison's cold face, and found all the others looking at him the same way. Crazy, the others said of him when he occupied the bridge that way. Look, he said, I'm running her through the jumps this go at it. I know my ship. You talk to me when it gets to the return trip.
I had no notion to take her through, Allison said, but I won't argue the point.
She walked off, feeling her way along the counter toward the corridor. He turned, keyed in, and took off the security locks all over the ship, turned again to look at Curran, at the others, clustered about the console where they were installing the new systems. He had offended their number one's dignity. He understood that.
But given time, he could straighten comp out, pull the jump function out of Ross's settings. And the other things. It was a trade, the silence Ross had filled, for live voices. Putting those programs into silence, sorting Ross's voice out of the myriad functions that reminded him, talked to him. "Good morning, Sandy. Time to get up." Or the sealed cabins where the Krejas had lived, cabins with still some remnant of personal items, things the Maziani had not wanted, things they had not put under the plates, and the loft where Mam and the babies had been. "Curran," he said, daring the worst, but trying to cover what he had already done, "you're on Allison's shift too. Any cabin you like." Curran fixed him with his eyes and got up from the repair. "That's in," Curran said, being civil. But there was no softness under that voice. "What about the other one?" "We'll see to it. Get some rest." We. Neil and Deirdre. Their looks were like Curran's. And suddenly Allison was back in the entry to the corridor. "There's stuff in there," she said, not complaining, reporting. "Is that yours, Stevens?"
"Use it if you like."
It was an immolation, an offering.
"Or pack it when you can get to it. There's stuff left from my family."
"Lord, Stevens, how many years?"
"Just move it. Use it or pack it away, whichever suits you. Maybe you can get together and decide if there's anything in the cabins that might be of use to you. There's not that much left."
A silence. Allison stood there. "I'll see to it," she said. She walked away with less stiffness in her back than had been in the first leaving. And the rest of them, when he looked back, they had a quieter manner. As if, he thought, they had never really believed that there had been others. Or they were thinking the way other passengers had thought, that it was a strange ship. A stranger captain.
"Going off shift,"
Curran said, and followed Allison. Neil and Deirdre were left, alone with him, looking less than comfortable. "Install the next," Neil said.
"Do that," Sandor said. "I've got a jump to set up."
He turned, settled into the cushions still warm from Allison's body. Lucy continued on automatic, traversing Pell's system at a lazy rate. Of Norway there was now no sign. Station was giving nothing away on that score. A long way yet, for the likes of a loaded merchanter, to the jump range. Easy to have set up the coordinates. He went over the charts, turned off the sound on comp, ran the necessities through. Started through the manual then, trying to figure how to silence comp for good. "I'll get it on tape, Ross. For myself. Lose no words. No program. Nothing. Figure out how to access it from my quarters only." But Ross knew comp and he never had, not at that level. Ross had done things he did not understand, had put them in and wound voice and all of it together in ways that defied his abilities. "But Ross, there's too much of it. Everywhere, everything. All the care, to handle everything for me, and I can't unwind it. There's no erase at that level, not without going into the system and pulling units. And Lucy can't lose those functions." "We got it." Neil was leaning on the back of the cushion, startled him with the sudden voice. "Got it done. Is there some kind of problem there?"
"Checking.
"Help you?"
Why don't you get some sleep too?"
"You're in worse shape."
"That's all right."
A smooth voice, a casual voice. His hands tended to shake, and he tried to stop that.
"I'm just finishing up here."
"Look, we know our business. We're good at it."
"I don't dispute that."
Deirdre leaned on the other side of the cushion. "Take some help," she said. "You can use it."
"I can handle it."
"How long do you plan to go on handling it?" Neil asked. "This isn't a solo operation."
"You want to be of help? Check to see about those trank doses for jump."
"Is something wrong there?"
"No."
"The trank doses are right over there in storage," Neil said. "No problem with that."
"Then let be."
"Stevens, you're so tired your hands are shaking." He stared at the screens, reached and wiped everything he had asked to see. The no sound command went out with it. It always would. It was set up that way.
"Why don't you get some rest back there?"
Why don't you get some rest back there?
I've got the jump set up, he said. He reached and put the lock back on the system. That much he could do. You two take over, all right? He got up from the chair, stumbled, and Neil caught his arm. He shook the help off, numb, and walked back to the area of the couches to lie down again. They would laugh, he thought. He imagined them hearing that voice addressing a boy who was himself, and they would go through all of that privacy the way they went through the things in the cabin. He should never have reacted at all, should have taken the lock off and let her and the others hear it as a matter of course. But they planned changes in Lucy, planned things they wanted to do, destroying her from the inside. He sensed that, and he could not bear for them to start with Ross. He was, perhaps, what the others had said, crazy. Solitude could do that, and perhaps it had happened to him a long time ago. And he missed Ross's voice, even in lying down to sleep. What he discovered scared him, that it was not their hearing the voices in Lucy that troubled him, half so much as their discovering the importance the voices had for him. He was not whole, and that had never been exposed until now, even to himself. He did not sleep. He lay there, chilled from the air and too tired to get up and get a blanket, tense and trying in vain to relax, and listening to two Dubliners at Lucy's controls, two people sharing quiet jokes and the pleasure of the moment. Whole and healthy. No one on Dublin had scars, but the war had never touched them. There were things he could have more easily said to Mallory than to them, in their easy triviality. Mallory did not know how to laugh. I just want to take a moment to point out I just adore how damaged he is. He's like, we know he's damaged. We already know he's damaged. We know why he's damaged. But that whole, oh, you're letting people into your little sanctum sanctorum that's got all the evidence of how damaged you are and having to open up. It's brilliantly done. It's brilliantly done. And then the delightful irony of Mallory actually probably being able to understand him better than these people ever can. Oh, it's brilliant. Despite them all being spacers. It's so good. It's so good. They reached their velocity, and in-system propulsion shut down. Allison felt it, snugged down more comfortably in the bed, and drifted off again. And waked later with that feeling one got waking on sleepovers, that the place was wrong and the sounds and the smells strange. Lucy. Not Dublin, but Lucy. Irrevocable things had happened. She felt out after the light switch on the bed console brightened the lights as much as she could bear, rolled her eyes to take in the place. This 2 meter by 4 space she had picked for hers. But there was a clutter in the locker and storage, a comb and brush with blonde hair snarled in it, a few sweaters, underwear, an old pair of boots, other things, just left. And cold. The heat had been on maybe since last night, had not penetrated the lockers. A woman's cabin. Newer, cleaner than the rest of the ship, as if the ship had gotten where the cabin had not. Pirates, Stephen had said. Pirates had killed them all. If it was one of those odd hours when he told the truth. There was nothing left with a name on it, to know what the woman had been, what name, what age. Not rejuved, the hair had been blonde, like Stephen's own. Or whatever the name might have been. And how did one man escape what happened to the others? That question worried her. Why, if pirates had gotten the others, he had stayed alive? Or how long ago it had been that a ship could wear everywhere but these sealed cabins? Questions and questions. The man was a puzzle. She stirred in the bed, thought of sleep-over nights, wondered whether Stevens had a notion to go on with that on the ship as well, in cabins never made for it.
Not now, she thought, not in this place, not in a dead woman's bed and in a ship full of deceptions, not until it was straight what she had not until it was straight what she had brought her people into. She was obliged to think straight, to keep all the options open, and keeping Stevens off his balance seemed a good idea. Besides, it was business aboard, and no time for straightening out personal belongings. Sorry, personal reckonings. And no time for straightening out personal reckonings, no time for quarrels or any other thing but the ship under their hands. The ship, dear God, the ship. She ached in every bone and had blisters on her hands, but she had sat a chair and had the controls in her hands. And whatever had gone on aboard, whoever the woman who had had this room and died aboard, whatever had happened here, there was that. And she had her cousins about her, who would have mortgaged their souls for an hour at Dublin's boards, and sold out all they had for this long chance. She could not go back, now, to waiting on Dublin for the rest of a useless life. Hers. Her post. She had gotten that for the others as well, done more for them than they could have hoped for in their lives. And they were hers, in a sense more than kinship and ship family. If she said walk outside the lock, they walked. If she said hands off, it was hands off and quiet. And that was a load on her shoulders. This Stevens, who figured to have a special spot with her. They might misread cues, her cousins, take chances with this man. No, no on-board sleepovers, no muddling up their heads with that, making allowances when maybe they should not make them. It was not dockside, when a Dubliner's yell could bring down 1,000 cousins bent on mayhem. Different rules, different hazards. She had not reckoned that way until she had looked in the lockers. But somewhere not so far away, she reckoned, Curran slept in someone's abandoned bed and spent some worry on it. And the others. She turned onto her stomach, fumbled after an unfamiliar console, punched in on comp. Nothing. The room screen stayed dead. She pushed COM 1. That should be the bridge. Allison in number 2 cabin. I'm not getting comp. A prolonged silence. Everything unraveled, the presumed safety of being in Pell's system still in civilized places, the reckonings that there were probably sane explanations for things when all was said and done. She flung herself out of bed with her heart beating in panic, started snatching for her clothes. A maniac, it might be. A lunatic who might have done harm to the lot of them. She had no real knowledge what this Stevens might be, or have done. A liar, a thief. She looked about for any sort of weapon.
Allison,
Neil's voice came over comm.
got lunch ready.
Neil? Her heart settled to level. In the first reaction, she was ashamed of herself. Much better. In the second, she was thinking it was stupid not to have brought her luggage into the cabin. She had a knife in that, a utilitarian one, but something. She had never thought of bringing weapons with her, but she did now, having seen what she had seen, sleeping in a cabin that could become a trap if someone at controls pushed the appropriate buttons.
You coming?
Neil asked. Coming, she said. It was better, finally, Sandor reckoned, with all of them at once in the bridge sleeping area, with trays balanced on their laps, a bottle of good wine passing about. It was the kind of insane moment he had never imagined seeing aboard Lucy. A thing like family, unaffordable food. Neil had pulled some of the special stuff, and the wine had been chilling since loading, and it all hit his empty stomach and unstrung nerves with soothing effect. He listened to Dubliner jokes and laughed, saw laughter on Allison's face, and that was best of all. Listen, he said to her afterward, catching up to her when she was taking her baggage to her quarters. He met her at the entry to the corridor, loaded with bundles. Allison, I want you to know, back then with the controls, I wasn't thinking how it sounded. I'm sorry about that. You don't have to walk around my feelings. Can I help you with that? She fixed him with a quick, dark eye. With ulterior motives? I don't sleep over during voyages. He blinked, set hard aback, unsure how to take it. A moment's temper, or something else. So, well, he said, not over what I said. Allison, you're not mad about that. Matter of policy. I just don't think it's a good idea. It's hard, you know that. I don't think I'd feel comfortable sharing command and bed. Not on ship. Sleepover's different. What, command? It's home. It's maybe Dublin does things differently. Maybe it's another way on this ship. But it's not another way that quickly. You know, Stevens, I'll share a sleepover with an honest spacer and not care so much what name he goes by. But on ship, somehow the idea of sharing a cabin with a man whose name I don't know. You handed me 500,000 credits not knowing. I rate myself priceless, man. One of a kind. I don't go in any deal. I didn't say that. I'll bet you didn't. Allison, for God's sake, you twist everything up. You're good at that. Right. So you know you can't talk your way around me. She thrust past with the baggage. He caught a strap on her shoulder, peeled half the bundles away, and she glared back at him through a toss of hair. Don't take so much on yourself, mister. Just the baggage. I don't need your help. She snatched at the straps he held and failed to get them back. Just drop them in the corridor. I'll come back and get them. You can't take any help, can you? She walked off. From the man who took 500,000 credits with never a thanks. She stopped and looked back when he started after her with the bag, almost collided. You choke on the words, do you, Stevens? Thanks, he said. That do it? Just bring the bags. She turned about again, stalked one door farther, and opened the compartment, tossed her belongings through the door, and stood aside outside it, a wave of her hand indicating the way inside. He tossed them after the first. What about thanks? He said. Thanks. She shut the door, still outside it. Look, you think you have to go through this to tell me no? I can take no. I understand you. What's the real name? Quietly asked. Decently asked. Think it'd change your mind? No, not necessarily. But I think it says something about no trust. First name's Sandor. A lift of both dark brows. Not Ed, then? No. Just no. Nothing further, eh? He shrugged. You're right. It's not dockside, is it? He looked into dark eyes, the same that he had seen one night in a Viking bar, and he was lost, as dammed up inside. Can't break things up when they get tangled. Can't, she said, so you understand it. I might sleep over with you when we get to Venture. So you understand it. I might sleep over with you when we get to Venture. I might sleep over with someone else instead. You follow that? I came. But if you reckon I came with the loan, figure again. I never, he said, never figured that. She nodded. So we take this a little slower, a lot slower. So suppose I say I'd like to take it up again at Venture. She stared at him a moment, and some of the tenseness went out of her shoulders. All right, she said. All right. I like that idea. Like? I'm just not comfortable with it the other way. Might change your mind some day? Ah, don't push. I'm not pushing. I'm asking whether you might see it differently. The way you look at me, Stevens, Sandor, makes me wonder. I understand how you feel about being on the ship. Maybe my talking like that in front of the others back there is a good example of what you're worried about. I didn't think how it went out. I know you know what you're doing. I just had my hands full. I've got some things with the ship I haven't got straight yet. Things. Never mind. I just have to get over the way I'm used to doing things, and dealing with the kind of crew I'm used to getting. She tightened her mouth in a grimace that looked preparatory to saying something, exhaled then. It seemed to have slipped her. All right, I understand that too. You mind fixing comp in my quarters while we're at it? His heart did a thump, attack from an unexpected direction. I'll get it straightened out. Promise you. After jump. Security locks? They seemed like a good thing when I had unlicensed crew aboard. Well, it's a matter of comp keys, isn't it? It was not a conversation he wanted. Not at all. Look, we haven't got time for me to get them all down or for you to memorize them. We're heading up on our exit. Is there something I ought to know? Maybe I worry a bit when I've got strangers aboard. Maybe that's a thing I've got, like you've got attitudes. Her back went stiff. Maybe you'd better make that clear. I don't mean like that. I'm dead serious. That's all I've got, those keys, between me and people I really don't know that well, and maybe that makes me nervous. The offense at least faded. The wariness stayed. Meaning you think we'd cut your throat. Meaning maybe I want to think about it. Oh, that's a little late. A little late. We're on this ship, and we're talking about safety. Our safety. If something goes wrong on my watch, I want those keys. None of this nonsense. Look, let's just get through jump first. I'll get you a list then. Through jump when where we're committed. I don't consider the comp a negotiable item. She jabbed a thumb toward her cabin door. I want my comp in there operative. I want any safety locks in this ship off. I want the whole system written down for all of us to memorize. We haven't got time for that. Listen to me. I'm taking Lucy through this jump. I don't want any question about that. I'll see how you handle her, and then maybe I'll feel safe about it. You look good, but I'm reckoning you never handled anything but Sims in your life, and I'm sleeping on the bridge if I have to see no one makes a mistake. I'm sorry if that ruffles your pride, but even I haven't a good notion of what Lucy feels like loaded. Don't you? Suspicion. A sudden, flat seizure of attention. I'll take the locks off when I know who I'm working with. He thrust his hands into his pockets, started away to break it off. Instinct turned him about again, a peace offering. So I'm a bastard. But Lucy's not what you're used to, in a lot of senses. I haven't nursed her this far or got you out here to die with. No, thanks. I'm asking you. I want you all on the bridge when we go into jump. All right, she said. A quiet all right, but there was still that reserve in her eyes. You watch us. You see how it is. Sims, yes, and backup bridge, but you catch me in a mistake, you do that. I don't think I will, he said softly. I don't expect it. Only you're careful, are you? I'm careful. They approached jump, a sleep later, a slow ticking of figures on the screen, a calm approach, an easy approach. Sandor checked everything twice, asked for data from supporting stations, because jumping loaded was a different kind of proposition. Full holds, an unfamiliar jump point. There were abundant reasons to be glad of additional hands on this one. Got it set, he said to Allison, who sat number two. Check those figures, will you? Already doing that, Allison said. Just a minute. The figures flashed back to him. You're good, he said. Of course. That was the Dubliner. No sense of humility. We all are. We going for it? Going for it. Count coming up. Any problems? 5 minutes. Mark. Got our referent. He reached for the trank and inserted the needle. There was no provision on this one but a water bottle in the brace, for comfort's sake. No need. They would exit at a point named James's, and laze across it in honest merchanter fashion. and then on to Simon's Point, and to Venture. The numbers ticked on.
Message from Pell buoy, Neil said, acknowledging our departure.
No reply necessary. It was automated. Lucy went on singing her unceasing identification, communicating with Pell's machinery. Mark, Sandor said, and hit the button. Chapter 12. Down again, into a welter of input from the screens, Frank blurred. Sandor reached in slow motion and started to deal with it. Beside him, the others, and for a moment his mind refused to sort that fact in. There was the mass which had dragged Lucy in out of the dark. They were at James's Point, Voyager bound, and Ross's voice was silent. Got it, Allison was saying beside him, icy cold and competent, just the way the charts gave it. He was still not used to that, a stranger voice that for a moment was desolation. But it was her voice, and there was backup on his right, all about him. Going for dump, he said. And then Curran's voice. We're not alone here. It threw him, set his heart pounding. His hand faltered on the way to vital controls. Velocity needed shedding, loaded as they were, tracking toward the mass that had snatched them. Things happened fast in pre-dump, too fast. Standing by dump, Allison said.
That's Norway,
Neil said then. He hit the dump, kicked in the veins, shedding what they carried in a flutter of sickening pulses. She still with us? He asked, meaning Norway. Sensor ghosts could linger, light-bound information on a ship which had left hours ago. No way to discern, maybe, but he wanted his crew's minds on it. Wanted them searching. Hard. Better set up the next jump in case, Allison said. I don't trust this. Outrun that? Sandor focused on the question through the trank haze. You're dreaming, Reilly. They kicked off velocity again, a numbing pulse that scrambled wits a moment. He blinked and reached an unsteady hand toward comp, started lining the tracking up again. We're in, Allison said. That's got us on velocity.
Getting nothing more than ID transmission,
Neil said.
Got a solid image,
Curran said.
They're close. That's confirmed. Out there, range 2 minutes.
The image hit his screen, transferred unasked.
Should I contact them?
Neil asked.
I'm getting no comm output.
No. He blinked, the sweat running on his face, concentrated on the business in front of him. And that ship out there, right on them as a warship reckoned speed, silent, sullen, was Maziani in all but name. He got a lock on the reference star, saw the figures come up congruent, fed them in, and sent the information over to Allison's console. Got it clear, Allison said. Still want me to take it, or do you want to hold it? He caught his breath, sent a desperate look over all the boards in front of him. Vid showed them nothing but stars. Other sensors showed the G-well itself, the mass, the heat of an almost star that was the null point, and the pockmark that was Norway. A situation. A raw Dubliner recruit asking for the board, maybe not particularly anxious to have control at the moment. He shunted things over to the number 2 board. She's yours. His voice was hoarse. He pretended nonchalance. Let go the restraints, reached for the water bottle, and drank. Here. Allison looked aside, a distracted flick of her eyes, took the bottle and drank a gulp, passed it back. He slipped it back into the brace and hauled his way out of the cushion. Looked back again, toward the screens, with a tightness about his throat. Norway. And Mallory was saying nothing. The presence did not surprise him. Somehow the foreboding silence did not either. Main day shift, he said. Let Alderday have it.
Sir,
Neil muttered, the first courtesy of that kind he had gotten out of them. Natural as breathing from a Dubliner on a bridge. Spit and polish, and he finally got it out of them. Neil stirred out of his place.
Got another one, Deirdre said suddenly. Got another ship out there.
Sandor crossed the deck to his chair in a stride and a half, flung himself into it.
ID is Alliance Ridership Thor, Deirdre said, coming out of occupation with the mass.
One of Mallory's riders, Allison muttered.
If they've got riders deployed,
Neil said, back at his own post. No one made any further surmises.
Second signal, Deirdre said. The ID is Ridership Odin.
Deployed before we dropped in here, Sandor said. What do you know about it? Curran asked. Sir, Sandor said. Curran turned his head. From back at Pell, sir. Did you expect this? What was it Mallory said? That she's watching the null point. I'm not at all surprised she's here, or that she's not talking. What would you expect? A good morning?
Lord help us, Allison muttered. And what kind of cargo have they handed us that we get Mallory for a nursemaid?
I don't ask questions. Maybe we should have, Curran said. Maybe we should get ourselves a couple of those canisters open. I'm reckoning you'd find chemicals in station goods, Sandor said. I'd even bet it's constant in company cargo, the same as we would have gotten. I don't think that's what Mallory's interested in at all. I think we're being prodded at. Because they're still breathing down your neck. That's what we've inherited. Your own record with 'em. Your own record with 'em. It's some kind of trap, something we've walked into. You applied for venture routing, Mr. Reilly. Dublin handed a marginer a $500,000, stifled an inquiry, and headed us for Pell's most sensitive underside. A Union sider. Put it together. Union and Alliance may be at peace, but Mallory's got old habits. Maybe you'd better think like a marginer after all. Maybe you'd better start figuring angles. Because they have 'em in offices, the same as dockside. And the powers that be on Union side had them when they got cooperative and wanted Dublin on this side of the line. But maybe you'd know that. Or maybe you should have sat down and figured it. If you've got it figured, then say it. Let the rest of us in on it. Not me. I don't know. But we're not making any noise we don't have to. We tiptoe through this point and get that cargo to...
Moving, Deirdre said. Thor's moving on intercept.
Sandor dived for the board. A sweat broke out on his sides, sickly cold on his face. He stopped his hand short of the controls, clenched it there in the reckoning that there was nothing they could do. No arms the equal of that, no ability to run, loaded as they were.
Ross, what's to do?
Contact them? Allison asked. No.
Stevens, Sandor, what precious else can we do?
We keep going on our own business. We let them escort us through the point if that's what they have in mind, but we don't open up to them. Let the contact be theirs. She said nothing. Helm was still under her control. The ship kept her course as she was, no variances. Message incoming, Neil said. They say escort to outgoing range. They say request exact time and range our departure from Pell. They're tracking us, Curran muttered. They repeat. They want acknowledgement. Acknowledge it, Sandor said. Tell them we're figuring. He sat down at comp, keyed through and downed the sound, started calling up the information. Sir, Neil said. Sir, I think you'd better talk to them. They're insisting. He snatched up the audio plug and thrust that into his ear, adjusted the mic wand from the plug one-handed. Feed it through. Accurate, he caught. Lives ride on absolute accuracy, Lucy. Do you copy that? Say again. Neil, what's he talking about, lives? To whom am I speaking? The voice from the ridership asked. To Stevens? This is Stevens, trying to do your calculations if you'll blasted well give me time. Your ship proceeded to Voyager as scheduled. You'll dock and discharge. Your ship will proceed to Voyager as scheduled. You'll dock and discharge Voyager cargo. You have 3 days for station call to the hour, and you'll return to this jump point on that precise schedule. Request information. No information. We're waiting for that departure data. Precise time local 2:02:0600 main day. Located February 2nd, sorry. February 2nd, 0600 main day. Locator 8868-0057-0076.35. Tracking on recommended reference Pell chart 05700. February 2nd, 0600 precise. So that's written out as 2/02:0600. You want our mass reckoning? He was scared. It was a track they were running, no question about it. He flung out the question to let them know he knew. You carrying anything except our cargo, Lucy? Nothing. The air from the vent touched sweat on his face. Look, I'll run that reckoning on my own comp and give you our RET. Is 0600 accurate? 0600 34. We copy 0600 34. Your reckoning is not needed, Lucy. Look, if you want data, no further questions, Lucy. We find that agreeing with our estimate. Congratulations. End it.
We're in trouble, Allison said.
They're accounting for our moves, he said. Just figuring. I'd reckon Pell Buoy scheduled us pretty well the way they set it up. He shut down comp, back under lock. So they know now what our ETA is with the mass we're hauling. Every move we make from now on.
I don't like this.
Every point shut down. Everything monitored. We make a false move, and we're in trouble, all right. He thrust back from controls. Nothing's gonna move on us here while that's out there. Shut down to alter day. Main day, go on rest.
Look,
Curran said, twisting in his cushion. We're not going through Pell system lanes anymore. We're not sitting here to do autopilot, not with them breathing down our necks and wanting answers. I'm here, he said, looking back. I'm not leaving the bridge. Going to wash, that's all, and eat and get some sleep right back there in the downside lounge. You call me if you need anything.
instructions, Allison said sharply, stopping him a second time. Contingencies.
There isn't any contingency. There isn't any blasted thing to do, hear me? We've got 3 days minimum crossing this point, and you let. He saw her face, which had gone from appeal to opaque, unclenched a sweating hand, and made a canceling gesture. They're one jump from Maziani themselves, you know that? Let's just don't give them excuses. We're a little ship, Riley, and we don't mass much in any sense. Accidents happen in the null points. What the hell? Now true align crosspoint and don't get fancy. Now true align crosspoint and don't get fancy with it. She gave him a long, thinking stare.
Right,
She said, and turned back to business. He walked, light-headed, back to the maintenance area shower, not to the cabins. Had no cabin. The others had. He was conscious of that. And he had to sleep, and they chafed at the situation. He stripped, showered, alone with the hiss of the water and the warmth and a cold knot in his gut that did not go away. Maziani's ships out there. And they had died out there, in the corridor, on the bridge, bodies fallen everywhere. Riley's sat and joked and moved about, but the silence was worse than before, deep as that in which Lucy moved now, with Mallory. Armored intruders. A name on them, on the armor, but he could never focus on it, never get it clear in his mind. He had never talked about that with Ross, never wanted to know, until it was too late, and Ross never came back to the ship. He had thought for a day on Pell that he was free, clear, but it was with them. It ran beside them, the nightmare that had been following Lucy for 17 years. They took it 3 and 3, she and Curran, on a 12-hour watch. 3 hours on and 3 off by turns, their own choice. Allison sat the number 2 chair on her off time, or padded quietly about the bridge examining this and that, while their military escort kept its position and maintained its silence. From Sandor/Stevens, who had made his bed aft of the bridge in the in-dock lounge, not a sound, although she suspected that he wakened from time to time, a silent, furtive waking, as if he only grazed sleep and came out of it again. And from Neil and Deirdre, asleep in cabins 4 and 5 respectively, no stirring forth. Exhausted. None of them was used to this, and what kept Stevens going bothered her, at depth and at every glance back in his direction. Something wrenched at her gut. The memory of an attraction. The indefinable something that had made her crazy on Viking, that had gotten her linked with a no-name nothing in the first place. Owner of his ship, he had said, in that bar, and maybe that had been enough, with enough to drink and a mood to take chances. Not quite dead, that gut feeling. And she had watched the man draw thinner and thinner, from haggard to haunted. Not sleeping now, she was sure of it. Not able to sleep. That ship out there, that was one good cause. Or the cumulative effect of things. And he was not about to trank out. No, not with the comp locked up and a warship on their necks, with 2 Rileys at the controls. She and Curran talked, when they sat side by side at the main board, spoke in low tones the fans in the rotation could bury. They talked operations and equipment, and how a man could have run a ship solo, what fail-safes would have to be bypassed, and how a man could talk his way past station law. She reckoned all the while that they might be overheard. Quiet, she signed when Curran got too easy with the remarks. Curran rolled his eyes on the reflective screens and back again, reckoning what she reckoned. No sleep, he signed back, the kind of language that had grown up over the years on Dublin, practiced by crew at work in noise, embellished by the inventive young and only half readable by outsiders. Watching us. Yes. Crazy. She shrugged. That was a maybe. Care? A touch at the heart, a swift touch at the head, sarcastically. She made a tightening of her jaw, an implied gesture of her chin to the ship that paced them. That concerns me. He keeps the comp keys. He's afraid. He's crazy. She frowned. Probable, she agreed. Do something. There was no silence in sign. It translated as I won't. She turned a degree and looked Curran in the eyes. This was her rival, this cousin of hers, the one that pushed all the way, all the years. It was Yang and Yin, the both of them, that made Alderday Third what it was, and carried Deirdre and Neil. Curran never stopped, never let up. She valued him for that, knew how to reckon him, how he wanted the number 1 seat, forever wanted it. It was one thing when there were 20 ahead of them, and another thing when they sat sharing a command. Watch it, she made her look say, and he understood. She read it in his eyes as easy as from a page. Number 2, she thought of him, and she caught herself thinking it with a stab of cold, that was how it was. There was a man who had this ship, and there was a working unit of Rileys who knew each other's signals and had no need of explaining how it worked, who looked down familiar perspectives and knew what they were to each other and where all the lines were. Number 2 to her, it fell that way in seniority by 2 days between her and Curran, between her and a man who would have been as good, at least in his own reckoning, who could not have gotten them what she had gotten. Not the same way, she could reckon him saying, raw with sarcasm. But Curran never saw any way but straight ahead, would never have blasted them out of their inertia, would never have taken any chance but the one he was born with. Dead stubborn, that was Curran. And it was his flaw. Possibly he knew it. It was why he was loyal. The same inability to swerve. It was different loyalty from Deirdre's, which was a deep-seated dislike of a number one's kind of decisions, or than Neil's, which was a tongue-tied silence. Neil's mind went wider than some, so it took him longer to put his ideas together. A good bridge officer, Neil, but nothing higher. She knew them, knew what they were good for and how the whole worked, stronger than its parts. She looked down from where she sat, and their reflexes all went toward each other and toward her in a sequencing so smooth no one thought about it. She was number one to them. To Curran she had to be. To justify his taking orders and not giving them, she had to be. And the others. It all broke apart without herself and Curran at their perpetual 1-2 give and take. Curran was jealous of Stevens. She realized that all in a stroke. A jealousy that had nothing to do with sex. With a pairing, yes. With a function like right hand and left. For her to form another kind of link-up, taking another man in a different way, in which an almost brother could not intervene, in which he had no place. What was Curran, then? She thought, too proud to settle to Deirdre and Neil's partnership, and cast out of hers in favor of a stranger met in a sleepover. He had to go he had to go on respecting her judgment. That was part of his rationale. But that left him. That flatly left him. She cast a second and sidelong look at her cousin, settling deeper into the cushion, folding her arms. "I'll think of something," she said. "Going to eat?" he asked after a moment. She looked at the elapsed time. 11:01. She nodded, got out of the seat, and walked off toward the galley. A cold sandwich, a cold drink from storage. Mealtime, as they reckoned time aboard, from the time of their arrival at the null point. There was no need to force a real-time schedule on tired bodies, no need to reckon real-time at all, except in communications, and they were getting no more of that. They had become introverted in their passage, disconnected from other timescales. And there was, when all the movement and human noise was absent, a silence that made her eat her sandwich pacing the small floor space of the galley, that sent her eye to the vacant white plastic tables and benches of the galley mess, and her mind to spacing out the number that could have sat at the tables. 30. About 30. Double that for main day and alter day shifts, a ship's crew of about 60 above infancy. And the vacant cabins and silences. She had expected a lot of 1G storage on the ship, a lot of the ring given over to the cargo. Customs would expect that. It was a question how far Customs would break with courtesies and search the cabins. More likely, they contented themselves with the holds and did a tight check of the flow of goods on and off. A perfect setup for a smuggler, nested in a ship like this, with a good story about pirates and lost family. But a woman had lived in her cabin before her. Another of Stephen's women, might be. But there were the other cabins, all lived in like the first several, they assumed. She had clambered in and out of the barren, dark metal core storage, entered all the holds they used in dock. But the ring beyond the downside area, and the cabins, and the galley she had not seen. None of them had. They were still visitors on the ship they crewed. She finished the sandwich, tossed the drink container into the waste storage, and the sound of the chute closing was loud. 11:36. There was time enough, in her free hour, to walk round the rim, to come up on Curran from the other corridor that let out onto the bridge. She left the galley area, rejoined the central corridor that passed through that, walked past other doors, all cabins by the numbers of them. She tried a door, found it unlocked. The interior was dark and bitter cold. Power save. A cabin with the corner of an unmade bed showing in the light from the door. Rumpled sheets. She logged that oddity in her mind, closed the door, and walked on, to an intersecting corridor. She entered it, found another bank of cabins behind the first, a dark corridor of doors and intervals. The desolation afflicted her nerves. She walked back to the main corridor, kept going, the deck ahead of her horizoning down as she traveled. A section seal was in function. She came on it as a blank wall coming down off the ceiling and finally making an obstacle of itself. Maybe 4 seals around the ring. 4 places at which the remaining sections could be kept pressurized if something went wrong. It sealed off the docking topside zone, the loft. She stopped, facing that barrier, her heart beating faster and faster. Looked at the pressure gauge beside the seal manual control, and it was up. The loft was the safety hole of the young on every ship she knew of. Farthest from the airlock lifts, farthest from the bridge, farthest from accesses and exits, and sealed off. It might open. It might. But a section seal was for respecting. Gauges could be fatally wrong for everyone on the ship. And no one was ass enough to keep hard vacuum in the ring behind a closed door. She hesitated one way and the other. Caution won. She reckoned the time must be getting toward 1200. No time and no place to be late. She turned about again, faced Stevens.
Hang you, coming up on a body!
It's cold in there, he said. He was barefoot, in his robe, his hair in disarray.
What's there?
She asked. Her heart had sped, refused to settle.
Cargo space?
Used to be the loft. Sealed now. I'll turn the heating on in my watch. I didn't think of it. Never needed to go there.
You give me the comp and I'll fix it.
He blinked. She wished suddenly she had not said that, here, her back to the section seal, halfway round the ring from Curran. I'll fix it, he said. I'll do it now, if you like.
You're supposed to be off. You have to follow me around.
Another slow blink. Got up to get a snack. Thought you were in the galley.
I'm supposed to be on watch.
She walked toward him, past him, and he fell in with her, walked beside her down the corridor into the galley. She stopped there, and he stopped and stood. Thought you were going to get something.
Thought you were going to get something.
It was her saying it. He nodded, went over to dry storage and rummaged out a packet, tore it with his teeth, and got a glass. His hands shook in pouring it, in filling it from the instant the heat. Oh, geez. His hands shook in pouring it in filling it from the instant heat tap.
Lord, Allison muttered, your stomach. You shouldn't drink that stuff when you've got a choice.
I like it. He grimaced and drank at it, swallowed as if he were fighting nausea.
You're wiped out, Stevens.
I'm all right. His eyes had a bruised look, his color sallow. He took another drink and forced that down. Just need to get something in my stomach.
You watching us, Stevens? You don't want us loose, unwatched? I don't think you've been sleeping at all. How long are you going to keep that up?
He drank another swallow. I told you how it's going to be. He turned, threw the rest of the brown stuff in the glass into the disposal, and put the glass in the washer. Night, Riley. Your noon, my midnight.
Why don't you go get a real bed, Stevens? A nice cabin. Turn out the lights, settle down, and get some sleep.
He shrugged, walked off. 11:58. She was due. She walked behind him, watched his barefoot, unsteady progress down the corridor, walked into the bridge behind him, and stood there watching him find his couch in the lounge again. He lay down there on his side, pulled the blankets about him, up to his chin, stiff and miserable looking. The gut feeling was back, seeing the disintegration, a man coming apart, biological months compressed into days. Hell on a solo voyage while Riley's sipped Cytine brandy. She looked at Curran, whose eyes sent something across the bridge. Impatience, she thought. She was late. Curran would have seen Stevens leave. She imagined his fretting.
Your turn,
she said, coming to dislodge him from the #1 seat.
Any action?
Nothing. Everything as was. She settled into the cushion. Curran lingered, tapped her arm, and, shielded by the cushion back, made the hand sign for question.
Negative problem,
she signed back, and then a quick touch at Curran's hand before he could draw away.
We two talk, she signed further. Our night.
Understood. A moment more he lingered, knowing then that something was on her mind. She gave a jerk of her head toward the galleyward corridor. Out, she meant, and he went. Watch to watch, it was the tale of her second, 1442, when Neil came wandering out of the cabin's corridor, shaved and combed and fresh-looking. Deirdre followed, pale and sober, looked silently at Stephen sleeping there. "All right?" The uplifted thumb. It was a question. Allison nodded, and they padded back again to the little personal time they had in their schedules. She had the ship on auto, their escort running placidly beside them. She watched Curran at his meddling with the comp console, quiet figuring and note-taking. There was not a chance he could crack it. Not a chance. A bell went off, loud and sudden, down the corridors the way Neil and Deirdre had gone. She looked up, a sudden clenching of her heart, at the blink of a red light on the life support board. The bell and the light stopped. The section seal had opened, closed again. "Deirdre," Curran was saying into com. "Neil, report." A weight hit Allison's cushion. Stevens leaning there. "Second seal's opened." "Second seal's opened," she said. "Are they all right, Stevens?"
"No danger, none."
She believed it when Neil's voice came through. "Sorry, we seem to have tripped something." Exploring the ship. Trying to do the logical thing, going around the rim.
"You all right?"
Curran asked.
Just frosted. Nothing more. Section 3's frozen down. You copy that.
"You got it shut?"
Shut tight.
"Here," Stevens said hoarsely, tapped her arm. "Vacate. I'll get the section up to normal. Sorry about that." "Sure," she said. She slid clear of the cushion, and he slid in. "Just go one," he said. "I'll take care of it. Do a little housekeeping. Take a break, you and Curran. We don't need to keep rigid schedules. God knows she's run without it." Curran might have gone on sitting, obstinate. She gathered him up with a quiet, meaningful glance, a slide of the eyes in the direction Neil and Deirdre had gone. "All right," he said, and came with her, walked out of the bridge and down the corridor. And stopped when she did, taking his arm around the curve by the galley. "He might hear," Curran signed to her, pointed to the comm system. She knew that. She cast a look about, looking for pickups, found none closer than 10 feet. "Listen," she said. "I want you to keep it quiet with him. Friendly. I don't know what the score is here." What's he running around there, with a sector frozen down? Contraband, you reckon?" "I don't know. Curran, have you tried the doors on the cabins, the other cabins? Something terrible happened on this ship. I don't know when and I don't know what. Hit by the Maziani, he says. But this. The loft is frozen. The cabins left. You know how they were left. There's a slept-in bed around there, frozen down." "I tell you this," Curran, Curran said in the faintest of whispers. "I don't sleep well in that cabin. Maybe he's worried for himself, about us doing to him what occurs to him to do to us. I don't like it, Ally. Most of all, I don't like that comp being locked up. That's dangerous. And you know why he's got us out of there. Not to look over his shoulder while he works, that's what. I wouldn't put it past him spying on us, or murder if it came to it." "No," she said, a shake of her head. "I don't think that. I never have." "You ever been wrong, Ally?" "Not in this." He frowned, a look up from under his brows. "Maybe the record's still good. And maybe we go on like this and we have a run-in with the military. What's he going to do, Ally? Which way is he going to jump? I don't like it." "He's strung out. I know it. I know it's not right." "Ally." He reached out, touched her shoulder, cousin for the moment, and not number two. "Man and woman, he thinks one way with you, and maybe he thinks he can get around you. But you let me talk it out with him, and I'll straighten it out. And I'll get those comp keys. No question of it." "I don't want that." You don't want it, I don't want it. But we're in trouble, if you haven't noticed. That man's off the brink and he's going further. I propose we have it out with him. We. Me. No chaff with me. He knows that. You just stay low. Stay out of it. Go to your cabin and we'll put the fear in him. No. You think of something that makes as good sense? You going to ask him and he'll come over? I'll figure you tried that. She bit at her lip, looked up the corridor, where Neil and Deirdre came down the horizon. Sorry, Neil said again. And Deirdre, who's minding the ship? He is. What was it around there? Loft, Deirdre said. She clenched her arms about her. A mess. Things ripped loose, panels askew. Didn't see all of it, just from the section door. Dark in there. Allie. I know, she said. I figured it was in there. She thrust her hands into her pockets, started back. Where are you going? Curran asked. To my cabin. She looked back, straight at Curran, straight in the eyes. I'm off. It's your shift. Maybe you'd better get back to the bridge. I'll be there. A while.
And that is where we will call it for this week. Sorry, it got kind of rough towards the end there. Probably just one more stream for this one, honestly. It'll be a little longer than this one was, but not by much. Another 15 to 30 minutes, probably. Yeah, it's a short one. It's a shorty, but a goodie. I'm quite fond, anyway. Definitely one of my faves by her. It's very compact. You get these really interesting, intersecting characters, uh, with their sordid histories, their completely different walks of life and outlooks on life. And you see how they kind of bounce off each other. It's really, really good character work, and it's something that CJ Cherry has always been very good at, is characters. She's superb at doing them. Even when they sort of, she has like a couple archetypes she works with, even then they wind up being really, really interesting and always having their own thing going on. So yeah, that'll do it for this Wednesday. This Friday, we'll be doing some more of Death's End by Shijin Liu. It'll be a short one, I think. Yeah, this will be a short one. And then one, maybe two on the outside after that. So, making progress. Gonna be a pretty busy month. For me, anyway. I apologize for whatever technical issue went on before. It was annoying. I haven't had one of those in a while. It could be because my software updated. My OBS streaming software updated. That'd be my guess. And then it didn't like something, and it was like, I'm going to make things difficult, because it did not want to boot back up. Anyway, it didn't seem to have any problems after that initial issue. I'll have to relabel and make sure that I have it set as part 1 and 2 of 2. That's easy enough to do. This weekend I will get I'll do that this weekend. I'll be updating the playlists. So those will be all set. With the start of the new month. Yeah. Oh, Friday's going to be July 4th. Amerikansky Independence Day. So. And how appropriate that we're going to be doing one of the most firework-filled installments of Death's End. It just sometimes works out, Anyway, with that, I'm going to leave. I'm going to dip. I'm going to see you all later. Stay safe, stay sane, and be decent to each other. And until next time. Until next time.